Jabulani Kunjani. Hello and how are you? Sorry for the lateness of this video, but your boy got gluten last week, eating some stuff he shouldn't have been. So I'm gonna do a combination blog and explanation of my experience as a principal, part 2. So heading to the mall as I get my beard done. Let's go. Up on the top.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Is it moving while I talk?
Yes.
All right, cool, great. Didn't get a chance to get my beard done. I have to come back and get that done later on. So I'll tell a little bit about my experience while I'm exploring some parts of the mall I didn't even see before. So as I said, I was hired to be a principal in Chicago. They operate in a network system where you get to, the school system was so big, like 600 something schools. Each area was divided into a different network. So the networks of schools, I was hired in one on the west side of Chicago. And that's when I came to learn about, how the networks were set up and how, there's a chief of the network, which is like a mini, school district. So there's a chief of the network who's like the superintendent, and they serve to lead a group of schools, maybe about 30 or 40 schools. The school council, like I said, hires the principal. So I was hired by the local school council, and they do have like an office, or a room in the building, which I'll talk about that later, and how that was somewhat of a hindrance. I understand the concept behind it, but it was somewhat of a hindrance. Chicago was also a place where they had unions. This is my first experience with a union, and I'll talk more about that later. But first school I was hired, pre-K through 8th grade, pretty good school. Nice neighborhood, nice family neighborhood, and I learned that principals are highly respected in Chicago. So I was only there for 1 year because this was the year of the school closings. Schools were slated to close. There was a teacher strike, first teacher strike in years, decades. First time the school closed because of a polar vortex, which basically shut the schools down for a couple of days. And then after all that, they were closing schools. So lots of interesting things happened in my first year there. Experienced sub-zero temperatures, and then the teacher strike, and then we ended up with school closings. First they were going to close about 300 schools, but they ended up closing about 55. And what they were going to do is close the schools and combine schools to better use the buildings, because my building was a 3-story building and we did not use the top floor, and that was the case for many of the buildings. So I'm moving from this location because it's hot, and I'll tell you more later on. Shop. Back to the discussion about the unions. So Illinois has teacher unions, and they have they have unions for a lot of things, but they have one specific for teachers' assistants have unions. So anytime I would have to deal with any type of major discipline, I would have to have a meeting with the union rep to make sure that I am adhering to their teacher contract, which was a book. The teacher contract in Chicago is a book.
Yeah, just make it.
All right, sorry. So a lot of things I had to do with the teachers union, and yeah, so that was an experience. I learned a lot about unions and how they bargain and how they negotiate, and that's what the teacher strike was about. It was about some updates that needed to happen to the teachers contract. Teachers had lots of rights up there, and it was very difficult trying to navigate how we're supposed to have school with all these protections that teachers had. I understood some of them, but some of them I'm like, I don't know. I don't get it. But, regardless of that, we had the polar vortex where it was below, zero. I thought that was the end of it. I thought it was the end of the world for me. I had my dog with me, like I said, and we ended up just, hunkering down in the bedroom where I was living. because the gas, the the polar vortex just made the gas just feel like nothing. So I had a space heater in the bedroom, and I closed the door, and we just like stepped in there because it was just so cold. But I had to buy all new coats. I learned to wear thermos under, and it's a specific type of thermo. The waffle one was not working, so I had to get a specific type that they sold up there. But after the first year, I adjusted to it. My first year at the school, there was a shooting out in the neighborhood, and of course I went into panic mode because I'm used to like that being a major emergency where I'm from in Georgia. I mean, that's police coming and all this kind of stuff. But there, the kids were out there in the playground, and some people were running across the street. They were running across the street, shooting at each other, two young men. And the kids just like looked, stopped what they were doing, and looked, and what was going on. And it was just amazing how desensitized they were to gunshots, because it's just a common thing there. Of course, I'm panicking, I'm shutting down the school, I'm like, call the police, call the network. And my assistant had to tell me, to calm down. It's very common. It didn't happen on our campus, so, report it, yes, but we're gonna move on. He said, look out the window. Everything was back to normal. Ladies were walking with their little strollers, people were just going on with their day. The whole thing lasted about 10 minutes, but for me, it was a lot. One good thing, once I was hired as principal, I had the opportunity to hire my own assistant principal. And that is the practice there, where when a new administrator comes in, they bring in their administrative team, which basically is an assistant principal. So I wanted someone new. I didn't want anyone that had been an administrator already, because they were going to come and try to tell me what to do, because I was new to the system. I'm not new to the position, but I'm new to the system. So I hired a young man that had been a teacher, so that I could teach him how I ran school, instead of having someone come in that had been in another school. They wanted to come in with their old administrators' ways or their administrative ways. So that was, and he was with me at that school when that school was actually closed. I interviewed, and I was actually hired at a welcoming school, which means that it was an existing school that brought in the school students and families from a school that closed. So it was it was on the south side of Chicago. So we had lots of advantages. The goal was for the school to become a STEM school, which it did under my leadership. Every year I was there, the school, went up. The grade of the school went up, one letter every year that I was there. So I was very proud of that accomplishment. We were able to become a STEM school. The parent rooms that I was talking about, in this school, some parents felt like it was like a lounge, and I had to involve not only the union but the school network in establishing what that room was going to be used for. It's supposed to be a parent resource room for parents to come in and job search. Parents want to hold workshops, things like that. But we had parents coming up there just hanging out, just coming in, watching TV, going to get some lunch, and they're just there all day, just hanging out. I'm like, no, this is not a lounge. This is not, and especially when I found some alcohol in there, I was like, no, y'all got to go. Call whoever you need to call, but you're not bringing alcohol on campus. So, that was establishing what that room was going to be was a little bit of a battle at first, but we got along really well once that was established. In Chicago, the principal is responsible for the entire budget. Previously, I was only in charge of fundraisers and a small, maybe $30,000 budget. In Chicago, I was responsible for a multi-million-dollar budget, which included teacher salaries, benefits. So I had to learn how to budget, the different types of budget lines and budget sources. So that was a learning, like I said in the previous video, this was one of the learning experiences that I had, because I didn't have to do that in the South. So learning how to manage a budget of that size. But I'm glad I had the support of my network behind me. Things were pretty good up there. I had a situation with one of my staff. I'm gonna say this in general because some people watch my videos and they know like where I worked. So I'm gonna say this in general. I had a situation with one of my staff members doing something inappropriate and eventually had to be let go. And so investigation tried to turn towards me, saying that I supported it or I was aware of it, and I wasn't. This happened a year and a half after my father passed away. So I had to deal with that. My parents celebrated their 50th anniversary in 2024, and 3 months later, my father passed away suddenly. So I had to deal with that, and then, coming back to this news, it was to the point that I decided that I was going to finish out the school year and then go back south, because there were a lot of things that were stacking up against me. I could have fought it and won, but I didn't feel like I didn't have the fight in me because I needed to be back south. My mom was living on her own then. My brother and sister, we all three needed to be there to support her, be in the vicinity to support her, and I was just so far away. So I decided to relocate back south. Thought it was going to be an easy process. The move itself was pretty simple, but the interview process, trying to find a position back in the South, was challenging. When I first started in education, I missed out on a lot of opportunities because I did not have the experience. I was underqualified. Coming back after the 4 years I spent in Chicago and the 6 years I spent in Georgia, the first 10 years as a principal and 5 years as an assistant principal, I was too expensive because there's a set salary scale. By then, like I said, I had my doctorate, so they had to pay me for my doctorate, and they would have to pay me for the years of experience that I had, which I had several interviews, but I would make it to the last round, but they would always hire a new principal, promote an assistant principal to principal over me. And I was just like, I have experience here in Georgia. I have experience in another school district. I have some experiences that people don't get here. I mean, I don't understand it. And it took someone from the HR department telling me that I was too expensive. They just said, we're not supposed to tell you this, but because of your years experience and things like that, you cost too much. So that was discouraging. So when I actually moved back, I ended up moving in with my sister, with my dog, because I still did not have a position and was devastated because I didn't know what I was going to do. Had one interview at a different type of facility and got that job, which was paying less than half of what I was making in Chicago. So I'll tell you about that next because my food is here. All right, so it's literally 2 days later. After dinner, while during dinner, I had a couple of adult beverages, which kind of put me down for the day, because I don't do that often. But anyway, and then yesterday I just wasn't in the mood. I was like, I need to get my beard done, and my appointment was rescheduled for today. So back to the story of when I interviewed for position as director of an educational facility. When I moved back to Georgia, principal opportunities were abundant, but I was overqualified basically. So I ended up interviewing for alternative type positions since they would not pay me what they should. It was August, September. School starts in August. in the States. So August, September in the States. In the southern states, it starts in September, in August. So school was starting. I didn't have a position, so it was time to think outside the box. So that's why I agreed to this interview. I was hired for the position. It's basically an alternative educational facility for students that were expelled or suspended from their school district. So we had some bad kids. It was a very small facility. We had maybe about 20 kids, 20, 25 kids, even though there were like 3 branches across the county. So long story short, because it's not much to tell other than dealing with fights and kids skipping and kids leaving, the facility lost its contract with the school district and ended up closing at the end of the school year, which had me back on the hunt again, which I was always on the hunt for a principal position. And that's when hold on. See, my ride is here. Oh no, not yet. So that's when I was interviewed for a charter school. Never worked at a charter school before, but I liked the idea of the independence. But the same thing kept happening there too, where I had like 3 interviews with charter schools and ended up getting one. And I'll tell you about that more later. I'm waiting on my boat, so I need to pay attention and put all these electronics up. Peace. All right, so as I close in on the barbershop, I can tell you about my charter experience. I was hired June, July, to lead a charter school, which has a very different structure. It has a governing board that's made up of people that really don't have an education background. They just know how to run a business. So they want the principal to be in charge of the education piece. So long story short, I was there a year and a couple of months. This is the only school where I left not on good terms. They wanted me gone and I wanted to go because they had a different governing board that was starting the second school year, and I'm very opinionated and had years of experience on how to get academic gains. They had a vision of how they wanted to increase their enrollment, which was dwindling severely. So they wanted to bring in their people that would do what they wanted them to do, and it wasn't me. So we made a mutual agreement that I was going to go. So within the course of 24 hours, I was gone.
And the school closed a little over a year later.
After that, I interviewed and was hired to lead a school that was, I'm going to cut this short because my battery's about to die. I'll tell you what, I'm going to tell you more about that experience and how I left and where I went for my last principal experience after I finished my haircut, my beard cut. Look at them all. Beautiful. But getting ready to go into the sorbet and get her done. Morning.
Morning, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? Oh, I have an appointment with Seasway. 11 o'clock.
All right. Sorry for all that at the mall. It was just, I was trying to make sure that I was not going to get in trouble recording at the mall, because here you have to, like, there's certain rules in certain places you can and cannot record. Even though I was at the mall early, and there was really nobody in there. But anyway, so got my clean, look like a human again. But so I was leaving off with me leaving the charter school. They wanted to get rid of me, and so they offered to let me resign instead of them firing me because they couldn't control me, basically. I mean, if somebody's seeing this and they worked at the school, that's what it was. I'm a very opinionated educator. I had like all those years of experience. One person on the board had been in the classroom for 3 years ago, and he actually supported me. But everyone else who had nothing to do with the field of education did not support me, or well, they wanted someone that they could tell what to do. Then they felt it was a lot of other factors dealing with where their vision was going and what my vision was going. So it was truly one of those, our visions were no longer aligned. So, I resigned, and it was in September too. So the worst time to try to find another job as an administrator. But fortunately, I was able to find a job considerably far. It was about an hour commute outside of Atlanta, in a different type of culture where I didn't want to have a flat tire. Let's just say that. I didn't want to be on the side of the road for anything. But it was an education facility. It was a residential treatment facility for students that were, in state custody. Let's just say that. And so a lot of them had committed some type of crime, or they were abandoned or something like that. Something dealing with family, some type of trauma. It was a trauma treatment center. And they lived there. They were assigned to live there for however much time. We've had students that stayed a day. We had students that basically grew up there, like from middle school age to high school age. They were just there. But I was over the education department. I was the principal of the education wing. It was very different setup. It was similar to when I was a director of the education facility. Basically, we used online tools because we didn't have enough teachers to be certified teachers to teach specific content areas. And in this facility, it was from 6th grade to 12th grade. So we definitely did not have enough staff to meet all of the specific needs. So we were supported by the school district, and they were very supportive, and I was able to make some gains, get some organization going. The main thing was like keeping the kids in and safe, and my goal was to motivate them to want to learn. Some of the school students had not been in school for over a year. Some of them, they had bigger things on their minds other than going to school. So I wanted to make school learning fun and enjoyable for them again. So I was at that facility for 3 years, and this is where it ties into my glaucoma diagnosis. I started noticing vision loss when I was in Chicago, in my Chicago assignment. When I would walk downstairs, I could not see the stairs because my lower peripheral was basically gone. That was confirmed one day when it was snowing and I had to go downtown to the district office, or to the central office, and it was snowing and I couldn't tell where the curb and the street were because of the thick snow. There was a little bit of an indentation that you could probably see with 20/20 vision, but I could not. So I fell smack on my face downtown Chicago in the snow. Lost my earbuds because I had some earbuds in, and I lost them. When I moved back to Georgia, I started noticing that I was having problems driving at night. So gradually, every year, there would be some type of impact on my eyes that kind of limited my ability to my mobility. So fortunately, at the charter school, there weren't many. Well, I didn't really have any problems at the education center because it basically closed at 3, and it was like there were no nighttime activities. It opened at a certain hour during the day, and it closed during the day. So commuting was not an issue. Driving to the charter school, we would have a nighttime activity every so often, and my vision was not that bad that I couldn't drive at night. I just didn't like driving at night. So if we had a night activity, I would go, but the drive home would always start and end with a prayer. So I was fortunate there. Commuting to the residential facility is when I started really noticing a loss in this eye, the left peripheral. I had a total of 6 fender benders between 2019 and 2020, all dealing with the fact that I didn't realize that I could not see. I mean, my visual fields were reduced and I couldn't see over there. So fortunately, it was just fender benders, but it was expensive out the wazoo. Of course, insurance dropped me. I had to get another insurance that was, I mean, unfortunately, I could pay it, but that money could have gone somewhere else. It eventually got to the point where I could not drive at night. So if there were any evening activities, I was excused. I really appreciated the director of the facility because he really wanted me there. And so he made accommodations for me. I would come in late because our shift actually started right before the sun came up, but he made accommodations for me to get in as long as my department was covered. He made accommodations for me to drive in once the sun came up, so that was good. It was also good that the sun was behind me both ways, so I was not driving into the sun, because I started noticing that the sun was extremely bright when I would drive towards the sun. This is the first time I had, I think it's called a retinal aneurysm. There was a jagged, over here on this side, actually, where I've lost vision, there was a jagged, looked like a crack in my eye. From this side, it looked like there was a crack in my lens. Like you have a crack on the windshield, and you're looking at that crack, there was just, every time I would turn or look anywhere, that crack was always there. So I contacted the doctor, and like after a day or two, it was gone. And he said that that's what it was. I think it's happened to me one more time since then, but it's rather scary. Eventually, I got to the point where I had basically could not drive out there anymore, especially after the accidents. I could not drive in the rain. Whenever I would drive in the rain, it would be the road and the rain, everything was just gray. It was just like driving into a gray sheet, or just having a white sheet at my, I know, you know how it looks when you drive through a car wash? That's how it looked. I couldn't see anything. I couldn't tell where I was or anything like that, just from the rain. So when I first discovered that, I would just pull over when it would start raining, because the rain wouldn't last for a long time. But it eventually started getting worse, and I talked to my supervisor. I was going to resign at that time, but he wanted me to stay on, so we made arrangements for me to spend more time at home. Eventually, I told him that I would finish out that 3rd year, but I would not be able to continue because, I know you need someone here full time. Everything was going smooth because I had people in place. I had, people and processes in place, so things went well. But there were some other people that just didn't like the fact that, I was being given this privilege. I call it accommodation because of my disability. Not disability, because of the way I do things differently. Let's just say that. So while I was at the charter school, also, I decided to venture into higher education, and I became a part-time adjunct professor to supplement some of my income, because at the charter school and at the residential facility, I made a little bit more than I made at the education facility, but it still was not on the level of what I would be making if I was a traditional principal, nowhere near it. So I decided to take on a position as an adjunct professor And then eventually I left that job because things changed during COVID. Um, I ended up having to make modifications and writing curriculum basically to accommodate the students. You know, I was working in the education field, and as an adjunct, I was teaching teachers, and I would have to make up assignments that um, they had assignments that were predetermined, but I had to make alternatives per student based on their environment, because it was online facilities, and there were students all over all over the United States, all over America, and each state had different protocols, and each school district had different protocols. Who could come into a school, who couldn't, that type of thing. So I told the people at the school, I said, I didn't come here to write curriculum. I came here just to teach. I mean, I need you to tell me what these students can and cannot do. Is there someone that they can contact? But they wanted me to do all of that, and that was very taxing. So I said, I'm just gonna take a break. I was gonna come back after COVID, but I did find another online opportunity once I started staying at home full time, especially once I left the residential facility. I found a full time position at an online facility, online university. I was there for 3 years, and I loved that because I loved it at first. I loved it, the convenience, because basically you just get up out of bed, go across the hall to your desk, log in your jammies or whatever. You work at your own pace. Things were they had protocols as far as timing and things like that go, but basically you worked at your own pace. If I wanted to get up, if I couldn't sleep some nights, I would get up and do my work, because I was not necessarily working directly with students. I was doing more evaluating their work. So I liked that, because I didn't have to deal with students. I just log in, basically grade papers, and that's it. So I like that, in conjunction with the fact that I was able to actually fully retire from the school district, public school, because of my eyes. So didn't like the fact that I had to still work while I'm retired. That just takes away the whole concept of retirement means you don't work. So why am I still working a full-time job just to make ends meet? But America. So I made the decision to look into living somewhere else where I could be comfortable just on my retirement, because gone are the days of when my parents retired and they were able to do nothing but draw retirement. That's what I wanted. That's what was not feasible, maintaining the type of life I had. I could have done it, probably have to move into a home or something like that, but no, I wasn't going to do that. I worked too hard, too many years, to have to reduce myself like that. No, I wasn't doing that. So I ended up here, and so glad that I made the move, so glad that I made the decision. Had an awesome experience in all of my years in education. Sometimes I miss aspects of it. I'm glad I made a positive impact on some people's lives. I'm still in contact with some people that I worked with, that I worked for, students. I'm just glad to have that impact that I really went into this trying to have. My parents had it in our community, and I was able to have it nationally, because I worked with people from all over the United States. So that's my story of my education career, and yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on my next video. Nyabonga.